We more than doubled the RSL's adaptation budget to £20.9 million, and our draft budget for the coming financial year maintains that.
Brief question 8, Stephen Kerr.
Government, what assessment has made of the culture of whistleblowing in the NHS?
Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray.
Whistleblowing culture is essential to patient safety, staff confidence and the effective running of NHS Scotland. All health service staff should feel confident to raise concerns, and I have been direct with NHS boards about the need to protect and support whistleblowers. Concerns raised by whistleblowers must be taken seriously and investigated thoroughly. Whistleblowing culture is kept under review through staff surveys, engagement with boards, the NHS Scotland whistleblowing policy and the work of the independent National Whistleblowing Officer, whom I met this week. These arrangements promote safe reporting, accountability, transparency and learning.
Stephen Kerr.
Well, with the Scotsman exclusive this morning about trying to silence whistleblowers by offering them trips to Disneyland, the Patient Safety Commissioner in Parliament this week saying that people are frightened to speak up because of the culture of cover-up we have in the NHS, with careers being destroyed, the bullying, the endless cover-ups. Neil Gray must accept that what we have isn't working. Will he accept that we need a complete reset of whistleblowing in the NHS and in Scotland's public services? And will he take a lead in making the case for a truly independent Office of the Whistleblower outside of the structure of the NHS?
Cabinet Secretary.
I met with the independent National Whistleblowing Officer, the Ombudsman, this week to discuss priorities for strengthening the speak-up culture across NHS boards. He was clear with me that the structures that we have in place are robust. The issue that he is concerned about is ensuring that there is follow-up when concerns are raised and that action is taken when complaints are upheld. I've agreed to work with them around how we can make sure that there is greater scaffolding and ballast provided to that, and that's what I'll take forward with the National Whistleblowing Officer.
Thank you. That concludes general questions. The next item of business is First Minister's questions. I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Businesses across the United Kingdom receive important financial support from government in the form of rates relief. But when this cash reaches the SNP government, they spend it on other things like their £500 million ferries, their £7 billion benefits bill and their propaganda papers on independence. Scottish businesses need this cash. They are suffering badly, with hospitality, including pubs, suffering more than most. The SNP have failed to pass on at least £700 million of business rates relief since 2022. Can John Swinney therefore tell us exactly where this money has gone?
First Minister.
So the Government, in its forthcoming budget that will be discussed by Parliament over the next few weeks, is putting forward a package of reliefs worth an estimated £864 million, which enables us to sustain the small business bonus scheme, which has been a hallmark of this Government's approach, and also offers a 15% relief to retail, hospitality and leisure premises liable for the basic or intermediate property rate in mainland Scotland. So these are just some of the measures the Government puts forward to make sure that we support the business community as they wrestle with the challenges that they face.
Russell Finlay.
Budget, but the Scottish Beer and Pub Association say the SNP budget falls well short of what is needed for many pubs across Scotland. And pubs are closing in Scotland at the rate of one every single week. Almost 300 have been forced to close their doors in the past 5 years. And just this week, a new survey revealed that 1 in 7 pub owners are thinking of calling time for the last time. Now, John Swinney must take action now to stem the flood of pub closures. My party is campaigning for 100% rates exemption for all small and medium-sized hospitality business. But John Swinney has rejected our calls, so more jobs will be lost and communities will lose their pubs. Can John Swinney therefore explain why he is happy to kill off Scotland's pubs?
First Minister.
Well, that's not what the Government is doing. What the Government is doing is decreasing the basic, intermediate and higher property rates to deliver a broadly revenue-neutral revaluation over the revaluation cycle. This will be the lowest basic property rate for properties with a rateable value up to and including £51,000. And of course, what I said earlier about the small business bonus scheme applies in many cases. And of course, that is part of an overall package worth an estimated £864 million. Now, what I would also say to reassure Mr Finlay about these issues is that the Scottish Government has committed, once we are clear on the consequential funding, if there is any, that comes to us from the changes that have been made by the United Kingdom Labour Government on pub and hospitality relief, which was announced in the last couple of weeks. Once we are clear about those financial implications, we will allocate those to safeguard the future of the hospitality sector, and we will allocate that in full once we are clear about the amount of money that's involved.
Russell Finlay.
That answer was all froth and no beer. Scotland's pubs are in the eye of a perfect storm from two anti-business governments. Labour is hammering them with crippling jobs tax in the form of national insurance increases, while the SNP fails to provide lifeline financial support through rates relief. And now they're reeling even more after being hit with eye-watering new rates bills. One Glasgow pub has been hit with a rise of 576%. These increases are inexplicable, they are unfair, and they will cost jobs. Stephen Montgomery of the Scottish Hospitality Group says that the SNP government is punishing Scottish hospitality. He backs my party's campaign to halt these devastating new tax rises. Now, John Swinney has got the power to act, so will he do so? Or is he going to call last orders on Scotland's pubs?
First Minister.
President, I acknowledge the implication for business of the increase in employers' national insurance contributions. I think it is, and I've made this point on multiple occasions in Parliament, it is a very damaging measure in terms of growth within our economy to have had those increases in employer national insurance contributions from the Labour Government. But what my government has done is that we've put in place measures to support the business community as a consequence of revaluation and also as part of the support that we have in place. So we will introduce a revaluation transitional relief scheme to protect those seeing the most significant increases in rateable values, ensuring that gross bills of an estimated 60,000 properties are lower in 2026-27 than they would otherwise have been. And that is part of the overall support of the Scottish Government, which is designed to support the business community when it faces challenges in this particular period.
Russell Finlay.
Thank you. Labour politicians were barred after Rachel Reeves' damaging budget. They were barred from pubs across the United Kingdom. Now, one of Scotland's leading businessmen is calling for SNP ministers to be locked out from their locals too. Sir Tom Hunter describes the SNP government's rate system as being, and I quote, not fit for purpose. He said, let's ban every government minister from their local pub until the business rates are fixed. Now, I'm sure many punters would raise a glass to that, but we don't want to give ministers an excuse not to buy around, which is why I've spoken with Sir Tom Hunter. He's agreed to meet with me and the First Minister at a pub to hear about Scotland's pub crisis.
Go for a drink, John.
So will John Swinney join us to settle this over a pint?
Yes.
First Minister.
I can think of anything less appealing than having a pint with Russell Finlay. I have a trip to the dentist that would be more preferable than going for a pint with Russell Finlay. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm terribly sorry if that's been a wounding set of exchanges in my typically generous style in Parliament, but I think most of the Conservative Party will agree with me. A pint with Russell Finlay is totally unacceptable on any occasion. To be serious, look, I accept the significance of these issues. I also take deadly seriously what Sir Tom Hunter says, and I engage with Sir Tom Hunter on a regular basis about a whole host of different issues, and I welcome his contribution to Scottish public policy and policy debate. But what I assure Mr Finlay about in every circumstance is that my government will do within the resources available to us all that we can to support business and the growth and the development of the Scottish economy, the success and investment, the bringing in of jobs, the low levels of unemployment. That's because this government is on the side of business and the economy in Scotland.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, John Swinney has repeatedly said in this chamber that the first time the Scottish Government became aware of infection issues at the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital was March 2018. Does he stand by that position?
First Minister.
I do, Presiding Officer.
Anna Sarwar.
Just like last week, I'm going to prove to the First Minister that what he's saying is a blatant untruth, because this Scottish Government document makes clear that he knew before March 2018. It's here in black and white. March 2017, there was a higher-than-expected incidence of Aspergillus. Health Protection Scotland reported to the Scottish Government. July 2017, positive cases of Stenotrophomonas. Health Protection Scotland reported to the Scottish Government. Evidence of serious warnings to this Government ignored. Aspergillus took the life of Andrew Lawrence. Stenotrophomonas took the life of Millie Main. These deaths and many others were preventable. And we now know that the Scottish Government evidence to the inquiry is incomplete. There were in fact 14 alerts to the Scottish Government between 2015 and 2018. So doesn't this prove that John Swinney's not telling the truth about what he and the Scottish Government knew and when and what they did about it?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the evidence before the inquiry clearly shows that the Scottish Government was only made aware of a water contamination issue at the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital in March 2018. Incidents reported through the Hospital Infection Incident Assessment Tool prior to March 2018 did not suggest there were wider problems with the water system at the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital. All of this evidence is already before the inquiry, and it is right that Lord Brodie be given the time and the space to get to the truth for families without political influence, interference or speculation on the outcome of his conclusions.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, it's not speculation, it's Scottish Government documents that proves that what John Swinney is saying is not true. This was Scotland's newest and largest hospital, and Shona Robeson and the Scottish Government got 14 alerts about infections between 2015 and 2018. Warning after warning was sent to the SNP government and met with inaction, and people died as a result. Worse than this, the Scottish Government's instinct was to close ranks and cover up. And nowhere is this clearer than a senior official, the Chief Nursing Officer appointed by Shona Robeson and the SNP, saying she couldn't understand why Greater Glasgow and Clyde had not just offered the families 50 grand, which is a trip to Disneyland. Shameful! Utterly shameful! And it should shame every member in the SNP government and on the SNP benches. Bribes rather than truth and justice. So enough! Enough! The pain this government has inflicted on these families is through the roof. So enough! Finally stop! Stop the denials and the cover-up. Stop the gaslighting of the families and the whistleblowers and the staff. And for once, just be honest.
First Minister.
I am horrified by the suffering of the families that have been affected by the losses in relation to the water contamination issues at the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital. That is why this government set up a public inquiry, so that Lord Brodie could undertake all the examination of the evidence to look at all of the issues that are involved and to give the truth to the families involved. And I want to make, and I have been, Mr. Sarwar, for a week has basically attacked my personal integrity. And it is unrelenting what Mr Sarwar is doing, and it is a sign of total desperation by Mr Sarwar in how he is conducting himself. Now, Mr Sarwar has written a letter to Lord Brodie. I am appalled by its contents. It is direct political interference in the conduct of an independent inquiry, and Mr Sarwar should be ashamed of himself. I will allow, because we have...
Let's hear one another.
This government...
Colleagues, sorry, First Minister, be very grateful if we could all hear one another. Those who have gathered to hear would like to be able to follow proceedings. First Minister.
This government has established an independent public inquiry led by Lord Brodie. We will respect the law and allow Lord Brodie to undertake his inquiry, and we will distance ourselves entirely from the direct political interference that Anas Sarwar is perpetrating in his letter to Lord Brodie. The Labour Party and Anas Sarwar should be ashamed of themselves for their conduct.
Question number 3. I call Gillian Mackay.
Drilling for oil and gas in the Rosebank oil field is set to tip Scotland over the edge of climate disaster. And this week we also learned it will directly fund a company complicit in the illegal occupation of Palestine. Campaign group Uplift has obtained legal advice which says granting permissions for Rosebank could be a breach of the Geneva Conventions. The Scottish Government used to have a clear position on this. Under Nicola Sturgeon and Humza Yousaf, it was opposed to Rosebank. Under the current First Minister, no one is sure. So can the First Minister confirm, does he still stand by this Parliament's commitment to boycott Israel? And if so, does he agree that the Rosebank oil field should not go ahead?
First Minister.
The Scottish Government's position has been consistent about the necessity for any new developments to be compatible with our agenda and our direction on climate action. So that is the consistent position that has not changed in any of the leaderships of the 3 First Ministers that Gillian Mackay mentioned. In relation to, so that is the test that's got to be applied on Rosebank, and that is the test that the courts require to be undertaken in that respect. And of course that's a decision for the United Kingdom Government. And secondly, in relation to the situation in Israel, I set out to Parliament in my statement in September the steps the Scottish Government is taking to act on the issues of connection with organisations with a business interest in Israel, and the Government has taken forward those actions.
Gillian Mackay.
Previous First Ministers have provided a clear yes or no as to whether they're against Rosebank, and I think it would be good for this First Minister to provide one. But warm words aren't good enough when climate destruction is funding illegal occupation, and we must put a stop to this. So the First Minister must understand why so many of us are frustrated by the news this week. The National has reported that following this Parliament's historic vote last year to boycott, divest from and sanction Israeli companies, the Scottish Government has not commissioned a single briefing from officials on how to implement this action. And my colleague Patrick Harvey's questions on the subject from October still remain unanswered 17 weeks later. So, First Minister, is your government truly committed to boycott Israel and support the people of Palestine? And if so, when will we see action?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the steps the Government has taken following my statement to Parliament on the 3rd of September involve instructing relevant delivery bodies such as Scottish Enterprise, where possible, to not provide support for trade between Scotland and Israel, and pausing new awards of public money to defence companies whose products or services are provided to countries where there is plausible evidence of genocide being committed, including Israel, which is the requirement that I placed into our policy in relation to the application of international law. So those issues are the explanation of the taking forward of the position that I set out to Parliament on the 3rd of September, and I hope that provides the reassurance that Gillian Mackay seeks.
Question number 4, Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister how the new measures that the Scottish Government has announced to tackle long-term unemployment will support its work to grow Scotland's economy.
First Minister.
Well, so Scotland's unemployment rate is already lower than that of the United Kingdom, and most people go back into work within 6 months. But we are keen to further reduce economic inactivity because that is a key to growing our economy. Our draft 2026-27 budget puts £90 million into devolved employability services so more people can get the support they need to move into work. We also know childcare is a key to helping parents work. That's why every primary school child in Scotland will have access to a breakfast club in August 2027, supporting families, boosting well-being and removing barriers to employment. And to make sure families know what help is available, we are launching a new parental marketing campaign, making it easier for those at risk of poverty to find and access support.
Mackay.
I thank the First Minister for that answer. While the Scottish Government is helping people into work, Labour's policies at Westminster are costing jobs. The rise in employers' national insurance contributions is damaging employment opportunities across the country, while Westminster's fiscal regime continues to cause hundreds of job losses in Scotland's industries. In the face of this, can the First Minister say any more about the Scottish Government's work to boost growth, create jobs and help people into work?
First Minister.
By targeting investment and providing tailored support and a focus on skills, we are determined to create pathways into work for thousands of people. The £90 million that was announced by the Deputy First Minister earlier this week will provide £40 million to support parents most at risk of poverty into training and employment, £5 million for specialist services to help disabled people access sustainable work, and £39 million for the all-age approach supporting people furthest from the labour market towards employment. The Government is also giving consideration in the formulation of the Child Poverty Delivery Plan, which will be set out to Parliament before we rise for the election, to further measures that will support individuals to access employment as part of our work to tackle child poverty.
Question number 5, Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's response is to reported warnings that a significant proportion of the medical workforce is experiencing stress, anxiety and burnout.
First Minister.
I am deeply grateful for the continued efforts of all our NHS workers in the face of sustained demand. It is thanks to their hard work and the focus and investment from this Government that we are seeing downward trends across nearly all waiting list indicators. This is having a real impact on people's lives, with more operations, long waits down for 7 months in a row and the number of GPs going up. None of this would be possible without the commitment of our hard-working NHS staff, and we take their health and well-being very seriously. That is why a dedicated work-related stress policy developed in partnership with unions and employers is due to be published shortly. And it's why we continue to invest each year in national wellbeing programmes to ensure staff can access rapid, compassionate, psychological and emotional help if needed.
Brian Whittle.
I thank the First Minister for that answer. Presiding Officer, this week research from the Medical and Dental Defence Union of Scotland suggested as many as 66% of doctors in Scotland had experienced burnout or were living with its effects. This comes after the General Medical Council found last year that a third of doctors had considered leaving the profession and more than half of doctors in training were at risk of burnout. Both the Royal College of Emergency Medicine and the Royal College of Midwives point to safe staffing levels as being essential for patient safety. Yet, despite writing this into law, the Scottish Government are continually failing to meet them, leaving NHS staff caught in a vicious cycle of stress-related illness. So can I ask the First Minister, when will the Scottish Government deliver safe staffing levels as promised, taking the pressure off of staff, giving them the time to deliver the care they want to give and genuinely look after those who look after us?
First Minister.
President, I recognise the importance of the issues that Mr Whittle raises because upon those issues depend the effective delivery of services within the National Health Service. So the steps that the Government takes to support staff are important. I set out in my earlier answer the investment in the wellbeing of staff that we take forward, but we also have an expansion of the number of staff working in the National Health Service. There are more staff working in the NHS now than when this Government took office. It's an increase of over 27%, with more nurses and midwives, and there are more medical and dental consultants. I think what I would say to Mr Whittle is that those commitments to expansion of staff are important. They are also helping us to deliver results with the sustained reduction in waiting times in the National Health Service, the increase in the number of procedures that have been undertaken, and for that I express my gratitude to the staff of the National Health Service for all that they contribute to make that possible.
Carol Mockin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Our hard-working NH staff always do the best they can, but they are being driven to burnout. Protecting the well-being of staff is a vital part of ensuring that patients get the care and support that they need, but we are facing a workforce well-being crisis. That is the case. So what tangible action will the First Minister take in response to the staff who are thinking about retiring early and leaving Scotland's NHS because of burnout, not because they wish to? We really need their skills, and we should value that experience that they have.
First Minister.
I agree with the point that Carol Mockin makes. I want staff to feel fulfilled in their work. I want them to be able to make their contribution. I think the evidence is there that that is happening, because we are seeing that increased level of activity within the National Health Service and that sustained reduction in long waits, which I promised the public I would deliver, and I am delivering it for people. And that's only been possible because of the commitment that's been made by staff and the resources that have been put in by the Scottish Government to make it possible. I do stress the fact that we have wellbeing support that's in place across all health boards in the country to make sure that staff feel well supported, and that is an important priority for the Government.
Question number 6, Rhoda Grant.
To ask the First Minister what action the Scottish Government is taking to ensure the long-term financial and operational stability of specialist domestic abuse services in the Highlands. First Minister.
Presiding Officer, we remain steadfast in our commitment to preventing and eradicating violence against women and girls, and have allocated over £30 million through the Scottish Budget to this vital work in 2026-27. This includes around £1.25 million to services in the Highlands through the Delivering Equally Safe Fund for the next financial year, to enable recipients to continue their work to prevent violence and support survivors. As noted in our Equally Safe delivery plan, we are committed to developing a flexible and stable funding model that reflects the ambitions of Equally Safe.
Rhoda Grant.
The First Minister will be aware that women's aid groups in the Highlands have moved from a service-level agreement to a procurement process with Highland Council, and that's left them facing significant cuts. Not only do they face cuts in council funding, but their multi-agency risk assessment conference funding and refuge funding are also at risk. Neither do they have their Scottish Government funding for next year in place. A cross-party group of MSPs have requested an urgent meeting with Highland Council, but have had no response. So, with domestic abuse on the rise, will the First Minister confirm Scottish Government funding for these groups, and will he also intervene with Highland Council in order to protect these specialist services?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I recognise the significance of the issue that Rhoda Grant raises, and the Government is providing funding directly to Women's Aid in Inverness to the tune of £219,000. Obviously, the issues that Rhoda Grant raises with me are around programmes and services that are funded by Highland Council. I'm aware that, as she has said in her question, which I'm aware from colleagues, there has been cross-party representation to Highland Council on this question, and in the light of the representations made to me, I will ask the relevant Minister to write to the Leader of Highland Council to request engagement with cross-party MSPs on that important issue.
Pam Gossel.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, just like the Highlands, my area of Western Bartonshire is faced with an ever-increasing number of incidents of domestic abuse. It was reported that a total number of women and children experiencing domestic abuse in Western Bartonshire who asked for help rose by 7.59% to 1,729 in just 1 year. Presiding Officer, these are shocking figures, making Western Bartonshire the local authority with the second largest number of incidents recorded by 10,000 people. At the same time, services offering vital support are starving for funding. When I brought this up during the Equalities Committee on Tuesday, the Cabinet Secretary for Finance and Local Government blamed misogyny and not their own government's shortcomings. So can the First Minister guarantee that services in the Highlands, in West Dunbartonshire and across the country will receive the funding they deserve?
First Minister.
Well, there is provision in the government's budget for financial support to the funding for tackling domestic violence and the abuse that women and girls suffer, and that is to the tune of over £30 million in the budget. And I've made no secret in my answers to all questions about violence against women and girls that the behaviour of men has got to be confronted. So it's a completely legitimate argument for that to be made in Parliament or in parliamentary committees. Now, what I would say to Pam Gosal is there is an important opportunity coming up in the course of the next few weeks to vote to provide this resource to women's aid organisations and to tackle domestic violence. And that will only happen if Parliament supports the government's budget. I will certainly be voting for the government's budget, and I would encourage others to do likewise.
Thank you. Move to constituency and general supplementaries. And I call George Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It's been revealed that during the financial crisis, Peter Mandelson was selling our economy down the river. Our First Minister, then the Finance Secretary, was working all hours to protect Scotland's economy and the people of Scotland. The Labour Party's old friend was undermining him every step of the way, leaking sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein. Can the First Minister tell me if he is aware of any impact this Westminster scandal has had on any Scottish financial institutions?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I am absolutely appalled by the revelations that have come forward in recent days about the involvement of Peter Mandelson in sharing information at the height of the financial crisis with Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted paedophile. And he was doing that as a serving government minister, and that somehow was overlooked when he became Keir Starmer's nominee to be the United Kingdom's ambassador to the United States. Now, at the time of the financial crash, I was taking decisions as Finance Minister to make sure that investment in housing could be sustained when private investment had stopped. These were direct financial decisions which were affecting the livelihoods of people in Scotland. I'm appalled that we were being undermined at the same time. Now, what I've asked my Permanent Secretary to do is to explore whether there was any risk undertaken to the strength of the decision-making in the Scottish Government, and I've also asked for that in relation to the engagement I had with the United Kingdom ambassador to the United States last year when I was acting to protect the Scotch whisky industry. It's an absolutely atrocious set of circumstances, an appalling judgment by the Prime Minister, and it is dreadful that Scotland and the United Kingdom have been exposed to such weakness as a consequence of the poor decision-making of the Prime Minister.
Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Given everything the First Minister has just said, none of which I would disagree with, does he have any regrets about staying in Washington DC in September last year at the residence of the disgraced former UK Ambassador Peter Mandelson, given everything that was known about his relationship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
Mr. Fraser.
I was not responsible for the appointment of Peter Mandelson as the ambassador to the United States. That was the foolish and inept decision of the Prime Minister to appoint Anna Sarwar's old friend as the ambassador to the United States. Now, when I go on overseas trips, I have a choice about where I stay.
First Minister.
Yeah.
So,
First
Minister, I am really keen that we have an opportunity for optimal scrutiny. That cannot occur if members are shouting. First Minister.
And the first people to complain if I had chosen to spend public money staying in a hotel rather than in the British Embassy would be the Conservative Party members in this Parliament. And just to give them all total, complete information, when I went to Lusaka in Zambia and when I went to Lilongwe in Malawi, I stayed in the British High Commissioner's residence to make sure that I was being careful and prudent with the public purse, as the people understand me to do. And of course, as the Conservative Party are shouting and bawling at me about this whole issue, let me remind them that one of their colleagues, using AI, is wasting hundreds of thousands of pounds of public money asking pointless parliamentary questions. It's Douglas Lumsden, and they should all be ashamed of themselves.
Thank you. I'm sure members don't intend to behave in a way that delays proceedings and prevents other members scrutinising the government. Neil Bibby.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Earlier this week, operators at Glasgow Airport announced that they are increasing their passenger drop-off charges from £6 to £7 for just 15 minutes. These exorbitant charges will not just hit working people, their friends and their family trying to go on holiday. It's affecting residents in nearby streets of north of Paisley who say their streets being congested by airport traffic. When the First Minister stands up, he'll be standing in the very same spot he stood in 2009 when he cancelled the Glasgow Airport rail link. Does he finally regret the decision, his decision, to cancel that project, given the detrimental impact that has had on our economy, residents and passengers?
First Minister.
The government faces hard political and financial choices at times, and we take them. That's what responsible government is all about. And the hard reality we faced in the aftermath of the financial crash, in which Anna Sarwar's old friend was Peter Mandelson, and he was leaking information to Jeffrey Epstein. We faced hard choices about our capital budget, and I had to take them as Finance Minister. Now, on the question of charges at Glasgow Airport, these are decisions for a private company that have been taken forward. But what people can rely on from this Scottish Government is that we'll take the wise and considered decisions to invest in our economy, as we've done on countless rail links around the country, the Leavenmouth Railway, the Airdrie-Bathgate Railway, the Borders Railway, all delivered by this Government, and we're determined to carry on that record.
Claire Hawkey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I remind Chamber I'm a practising NHS nurse. This week, the Labour UK Government admitted that it does not know how many NHS staff will be affected by its proposed changes of immigration rules. Once again, the Labour Party are harming our health service in their blind pursuit of reform policies. Does the First Minister agree with me that people deserve answers from Anna Sarwar on whether he supports Keir Starmer's plans to slam the door in the face of workers keeping our hospitals and care homes running? And can he confirm that his SNP Scottish Government will oppose these Labour plans and stand up for our valued NHS staff?
On devolved matters.
Presiding Officer, there's been a 77% drop in the number of health and care visas being granted by the Home Office. And that is going to have a direct effect on our health and care system, where in the last survey I saw, social care workers, for example, were 26% of those workers were workers that had come from other countries. Now, we face challenges in finding the volume of available labour that we require in our system, despite the fact that we've increased health and social care employment. So these measures by the UK Labour Government are directly damaging to the operation of our health and care system, and I can assure Claire Hawkey of the determination of the Scottish Government to make sure that we reverse these policies.
Sharon Dowie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Recently, I met with Star Rape Crisis Centre in Kilmarnock, which supports survivors aged 13 and above across Ayrshire. Despite covering a large area, Star have fewer than 3 full-time staff. They cannot meet the demand and find it a challenge to advertise their service widely because of their concern for survivors being stuck for months in their growing waiting lists. By contrast, other centres across Scotland supporting significantly lower populations employ several times more staff, raising serious questions about how funding is allocated. First Minister, can you explain how the Scottish Government calculates and allocates funding to rape crisis centres why there is such a stark disparity in staffing levels for the same service, and what immediate action will be taken to ensure that the Star Rape Crisis Centre receives the funding needed to meet demand.
First Minister.
The funding which will be going to the organisation will be coming through the Equally Safe programme. Sian Dow raises a fair point to which I can't give her a definitive answer as to what the disparity is in terms of the allocations. But I will look into the comparative position in the organisation that she's put to me, and I'll ask Ms Somerville to write to her to explain the rationale, and I'm very happy to discuss it further in the light of that reply.
Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister is aware that the Centre for Contemporary Arts in Glasgow announced it was going into liquidation this week, with the loss of 39 jobs directly, as well as tenants and freelancers also affected. You also know that Creative Scotland, a public body, owns the building and has done for the last half-century. It's been a fixture in the Glasgow arts scene. They have failed to intervene in this situation, and it does not square with the Government's Fair Work commitments on consultation, dignity at work and worker protection. So I asked the First Minister to intervene directly with Creative Scotland and order them to set up a successor organisation to re-employ those workers and reopen this critical cultural organisation in the heart of Glasgow, in a city which has already suffered greatly from the art school's ongoing fire in aftermath and the wider issues of regeneration on Sauchiehall Street. I hope he will commit to doing that.
First Minister.
Creative Scotland have engaged with the Centre for Contemporary Arts over a long period of time to try to find a solution to the Centre's financial challenges. When the CCA became insolvent, Creative Scotland were not able to issue any further payments under the CCA's multi-year funding award. That would not have been an appropriate use of public money. The Scottish Government, through Creative Scotland, will, however, continue to engage on the issue and to work, as Creative Scotland is currently doing, to find a new operator for the building as soon as possible, recognising the cultural significance of the CCA in Glasgow. So I think it's one of these cases where the rules on public finance and the ability to deploy that where an organisation becomes insolvent put a real obstacle in being able to operate continuously. But there is work underway through Creative Scotland to find alternative routes, and I hope that bears fruit. And obviously, ministers will keep Mr Swinney involved and informed of the developments.
Claire Adamson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Since 2015, I have been supporting WASPI women in my Rotherham and Wishaw constituency. WASPI campaigners from across Scotland have come to the Parliament today. Some of them are in the gallery, and they are rightly challenging the Labour Government's latest U-turn, which denies WASPI women compensation for a second time. Labour Party politicians, some of whom are also in the chamber today, tweeted photos of supporting, standing shoulder to shoulder with WASPI women, only to portray them in power. At this time, when more than 2 Scottish WASPI women a day are dying without compensation, what assurance can the First Minister provide to WASPI women that the SNP Scottish Government will stick to its principles and continue to stand by their side, unlike the so-called Scottish Labour Party?
First Minister.
Preserves, can I begin by reiterating my strong support for the WASPI women and to congratulate and thank Claire Adamson for the absolutely tenacious way in which she has pursued this issue on a constant basis. The repeated betrayal of WASPI women by the UK Labour Government is absolutely appalling. And the fact that so many Labour politicians promised WASPI women before the election that they would have full application of the compensation schemes and have now deserted those WASPI women after the election tells us all we need to know about the opportunism of voting Labour at any election.
Liam Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. For over 2 years now, Aberdeen Royal Infirmary has reported worsening ambulance stacking caused by spiralling waiting times. Last week, further delays were caused when a patient sprayed CS gas into the eyes of a nurse and a security guard, locking down ARI altogether. In fact, figures show police are called to ARI every other day to deal with assaults and disturbances. At the heart of this are exhausted, dedicated staff and patients waiting in agony, bearing the brunt of a lack of government action. So when will the First Minister finally get a grip of this situation at ARI and personally intervene to help these hard-working staff and long-suffering patients?
First Minister.
So the Health Secretary is actively engaged with NHS Grampian on the issues at Aberdeen Royal Infirmary. We work in partnership with the Scottish Ambulance Service, which is resourced to ensure that the needs of patients are met. On a majority of occasions, Scottish Ambulance Service emergency incidents are managed without any need to transfer to hospital, but there is a need when those transfers are required for that to be efficient and sustainable. And these issues are at the heart of the engagement between the Government and NHS Grampian to improve the situation at Aberdeen Royal Infirmary.
Joe Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I join disabled people, third-party organisations and colleagues in welcoming the first Disabled People's Cabinet hosted by the First Minister this week. I was therefore appalled to learn that the Labour Party have quietly lodged a motion to annul the changes this SNP government is trying to make to voting rights on local integrated joint boards. These changes would give disabled people, unpaid carers and people who use social care packages a vote on the services that affect them. Not content with stripping disabled people of their benefits, the Labour Party is now trying to silence their voices on local services. Does the First Minister therefore join me in calling on the Labour Party to back the voting rights of disabled people, carers and other people with lived experience and reverse this shameful betrayal?
On matters of devolved responsibility.
President, I was deeply grateful to disabled people who met with the Cabinet on Tuesday, and we had a very substantial and thought-provoking conversation about the challenges and issues that are faced by disabled people. It was clear, one of the clear requests of disabled people was for them to have a voice in integrated joint boards and to be able to exercise that through voting rights. And that's what the Government is providing for. I'm absolutely lost for words that the Labour Party is opposing us on all of this. And I think it's another lesson that people have got to be very, very careful about voting for the Labour Party, because whether it's WASPy women or disabled people, what they can rely on is the Labour Party will let them down.
Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. This week, the Scottish Government are in court arguing that evil men should continue to be housed in the female prison estate. Now, the First Minister wanted as much information about this in the public domain, which is why he released the written case. In that written case, the Government's defence of their position is to make a comparison between a mum taking a baby boy into a changing room is somehow the same as murderers, male murderers, being in the female prison estate. Is the First Minister genuinely happy that that is the defence his government are making? And is he content to spend public money on this court case?
First Minister.
President Officer, this is a live court case that's been heard at this present moment. And what the government is doing, as any responsible government must, is ensuring that the policy position that's applied complies with all of our legal obligations, including, of course, the Scotland Act and the European Convention on Human Rights.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's questions. Point of order, Edward Mountain.
Very briefly, Presiding Officer, during general questions, I raised a question on aquaculture. It would have been fair of me to raise that I have an interest in a wild salmon fishery. So I do that now, Presiding Officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mountain. The next item of business is a member's business debate in the name of Claire Haughey, and there will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the chamber and the gallery to do so.
Okay, if I could ask those leaving the public gallery to do so as quickly and as quietly as possible as we resume business. And the next item of business is a members' business debate on motion 20393, the name of Claire Hawkey, on the 900th anniversary of Rutherglen as a royal borough. The debate will be concluded without any questions being put. I'd invite members wishing to participate to press the request to speak buttons. I call on Claire Hawkey to open the debate. Around 7 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I'm absolutely delighted to secure this debate today to mark the 900th anniversary of Rutherglen being granted Royal Borough status by King David I, which gave it special trading rights and underlined its place of importance in medieval Scotland. I have the tremendous honour of representing Rutherglen, my hometown, where I was brought up, where I brought up my family and where I still live today. And I could say a great deal about our town, but fear I'm only going to be able to scratch the surface in the time available to me. Because Rutherglen is one of those places where everywhere you turn, you see something of its fascinating history. My constituency office is situated on Rutherglen Main Street. It's a particularly wide street because it was the place to be to trade horses from the 1600s. And with time, fairs there were held 12 times a year. A few steps from my office is Old Parish Church, which has been a site of Christian worship for at least 1400 years and is believed Druid worship before that. John Menteith betrayed William Wallace there in 1305, and the Scottish Parliament also sat there. And set in its boundary walls is a statue of Dr James Gorman, who treated Ruglonians long before the NHS was established, often for no or little charge, and during some of Lanarkshire's worst mining disasters. A few more steps takes you to the Town Hall, completed in 1862, where civic leaders decided a new one was needed after significant population expansion. Near the Town Hall is the Mercat Cross, a 100-year-old replica of the original, to which the Covenanters nailed their 1679 Declaration of Rutherglen. And behind my office runs King Street, where Rutherglen Castle sat at its junction with Castle Street. Built in the 13th century, its 5-foot thick walls made it a crucial stronghold during the Wars of Independence, which was besieged several times by Robert the Bruce. Now, I remember our colleague Jamie Hepburn speaking about his hometown, Cumbernauld, during a members' debate, joking about how many towns claim a link to Mary Queen of Scots. And not wishing to disappoint in this regard, I can say that Mary led a march to Rutherglen Castle in 1568 to round up her supporters before her journey west. A year later, it was burnt to the ground by the Earl of Moray to punish the Hamilton family for supporting her at the Battle of Langside. Presiding Officer, I could spend all afternoon talking about Rutherglen's history, from Galliflat Tumulus, a 2nd century Roman burial site, the coracles that travelled up and down the Clyde to and from Rutherglen in the 12th century, or the steamships built there in the 19th century, or how James Watt designed a bridge for the town before his tinkering with steam engines allowed its steel, chemical and textile industries to flourish. The historic areas near the centre, such as Bankhead, Burnhill and Galliflat, have changed hugely over the years, and the village of Burnside has expanded greatly. And post-war developments on farms and estates in Blairbeth, Cathkin, Eastfield, Fernhill, Spittal and Springhall are now well-established communities, each place with its own distinct identity, but firmly and proudly part of Rutherglen's story. I also remember Mr Hepburn mentioning the legendary broadcaster Magnus Magnusson. Well, he married the journalist Marnie Baird in Wardlaw Hill Parish Church before living in Calderwood Road for many years. Their daughter Sally, of course, became a renowned broadcaster, and she set her novel Music in the Dark in a Rutherglen tenement after growing up in the town. And in a list of notable Ruglonians, I could also include actors Robbie Coltrane, Janet Brown, Scott Kyle and Stan Laurel. Or the poet Edward Morgan, fashion designer Jonathan Saunders, or musicians like Midge and Audrey Tate. John Logie Baird lived a few hundred yards from where CCTV Limited now display a beautiful vintage television in their shop window. Infamously, he once fused all the lights in the town, which hastened his departure from his job at the local power station. And there's a wheen of sports people, from Steve Archibald, who went from Fernhill Athletic to Barcelona, or Rutherglen ladies captain Sadie Smith, who battled against the odds even to play at a time when women's football was banned in England and deemed quite unsuitable in Scotland. Again, this could be a very long list, Ruglonians have truly made their mark on the world. When the 900th anniversary of our town's borough status was approaching, there grew a real desire to mark the occasion, to take the chance to reflect on who we are, where we've come from and where we're going. And Rutherglen 900 was born, a community-led initiative built on collaboration between local people, organisations, schools, community groups and volunteers. It's thanks to this large community network, which includes Healthy and Happy Community Development Trust, Camglen Radio, heritage organisations, schools, artists, sports groups and local residents who were keen to give back to their community. And I'm delighted to have the opportunity to thank each and every person who has given up their time to organise the wonderful programme of events which will mark our town's milestone year. And not only that, but to thank them for all their efforts, not just this year, but every year, and indeed every day, to support local residents. And I would urge anyone listening to visit the Rutherglen 900 website to see the depth and breadth of the programme they've put together. There truly is something for everyone. Our town will host walking and vintage bus tours highlighting local landmarks and exploring Rutherglen's radical history of social activism. A community picnic and a sing-along event, multiple talks and exhibitions, sporting events, a live comedy, dance and music event, including the town's very first Mela and an inaugural book festival. There's a packed schools programme with events for children and young people every month this year. And it was an absolute treat to hear the debut performance of the Song of Rutherglen at the Rutherglen 900 launch event in the Town Hall last Friday, beautifully sung by pupils from each local school. If you're in the right place at the right time, you might even bump into the official mascot, Doogie the Pigeon, designed by Emma from St Anthony's Primary School. Whether you call it Rutherglen, Ruglen, Ruggie, there's a lot happening in our town this year as always, and there's much to celebrate about our people and organisations who make it such a great place to live and work. I'm thoroughly looking forward to all the opportunities that we'll have to celebrate, to reminisce and to look to our town's future over the next year. And Rutherglen's ready to welcome all who would like to join us.
Thank you, Ms Hawking. We move to the open debate. I call first Annie Wells to be followed by Bob Doris. Around 4 minutes, Ms Wells.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I would like to congratulate Claire Hawkey on bringing this debate to the Chamber today. I really enjoyed your speech there about all the history of Rutherglen. It is a privilege to speak today about the 900 years of Rutherglen, and my dad would call it Ruglen, but one of Scotland's oldest royal boroughs and a town with a proud and distinct identity. Rutherglen is not a place you talk about in the abstract. It is a place people remember, and it's a place people know well, and it's a place I know well growing up. Over the years, I spent a great deal of time in the town visiting schools, meeting community groups, speaking with local traders, and of course spending my youth in some of the pubs in Rutherglen on and off the main street. But I've seen firsthand how Rutherglen has changed, adapted and endured. I also have many fond personal memories rooted in the area. Many of my friends lived in Rutherglen, and I often find myself recalling the old days with affection and fond memories of time spent in and around the town, in places on the streets that I knew well during the late 80s and 90s, early 90s, I'll say early 90s, heading to the video shop Main Street with friends and then walking through Overton Park. And it gave you a great sense of community to know that there was places around about there, and it gave you the sense of community and character of that area. And I was married almost, 1992, 34 years ago, and I got married. I had my wedding reception at the nearby Kings Park Hotel, because that was a place that we kind of knew well, and it represented both Glasgow and Rutherglen, where we were from. But more recently, I've enjoyed simply taking walks around the area and reflecting on how it has evolved, how familiar streets have changed, but the character and warmth of the community has remained, Presiding Officer. And as Ms Hawkey says, today Rutherglen continues to be shaped by independent businesses and local employers who have chosen to invest here. Long-standing firms remain a familiar presence, while smaller cafes, family-run shops and service businesses along Main Street and the surrounding area continue to provide not just jobs, but connection and community. These are businesses run by people who care deeply about the town and its future. And I recently had the opportunity to visit Rutherglen High School to see their eco-project, led by pupils who are passionate about sustainability and improving their local environment. And what impressed me most was not just the ambition of the project, but the pride of the young people who took part in contributing positively to their community. And I absolutely believe that we need to take pride in our communities, and I think we see that abundantly clear in Rutherglen, in Burnside and Cambuslang. And it was a powerful reminder that Rutherglen's future is being shaped by young people who care deeply about where they live. Rutherglen, as we've heard, has also produced an extraordinary amount of talent over the years across sport, culture, business and public life. And that is no accident. The town has strong links to figures such as we've heard, Stan Laurel, one half of the most iconic, I would say, comic double act in history, Laurel and Hardy. I was one and my dad was the other one. You can decide what one we were. And I'll take an intervention from Paul Swinney.
Paul Swinney.
Thank the member for giving way on that point. I think the connection with Stan Laurel is one that shows the closeness between Ruglonians and Glaswegians, because of course Stan Laurel cut his teeth on the boards of the Britannia Panopticon Music Hall in Glasgow's Trongate. And whether it was the original construction of Glasgow Cathedral to the shared relationship we have with our transport systems, even the 21-year experiment that Rutherglen had as part of Glasgow District Council, there's an indelible link between the city of Glasgow and Rutherglen, and long may that flourish, particularly through projects like Clyde Gateway. Annie Wells, I can give you
and I thank Mr Swinney for that intervention. Of course, we do have that joint connectivity as well. We're not that far away, and it's good that we can work together on certain projects. And we've heard Glasgow's 850 years old this year as well, so these are beating us by 50 years. So, but as a regional MSP, I can take a bit of credit for both. But it's also been associated with brilliant comic talent closer to home, as we've heard, including Janet Brown, well known for her unforgettable impression of Margaret Thatcher, which, presiding officer, I promise to take in good-humoured spirit, and which is intended even as a proud Tory in the building. But this all reflects a town that nurtures ambition, resilience and a strong sense of belonging. As we mark this remarkable anniversary, it is clear that Rutherglen's story is not just one of history, but one of ongoing contribution, pride and potential, and happy 900 years. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Ms Wells. Then I call Bob Doris to be followed by Monica Lynn in around 4 minutes. Mr Doris.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I start by congratulating Claire Hockey for securing the debate here this afternoon, celebrating the 900th anniversary of Rutherglen as a royal borough. My goodness, I'm glad I'm not living 900 years ago. Claire Hockey's put on record the intrigue, treachery and treason that's taken place in Rutherglen. I'm sure the place has moved on considerably from those, I hope, from those medieval times. I know that Claire's a real champion for Rutherglen. I think that came out quite clearly in Claire Hockey's speech. To hear her speak so passionately about the community-led Rutherglen 900 project. I'm also pleased to hear Claire talk about the kind of healthy and happy aspects of them being part of this community-led project, and Camglen the Radio. Just a couple of organisations that I know quite well from my days as a regional MSP. Claire Hockey also went through a list of famous people from Rutherglen. I was scoring at my list of people I was going to name check as they were going on. Bobby Murdoch was on the list as well, he didn't mention. But actually, I would ask, who was Nellie Hunter? Because Nellie Hunter, I didn't know until a couple of hours ago, is a suffragist from Rutherglen, and there's an exhibition all about Nellie Hunter at the Library and Heritage Centre in just a few days' time. That's the point of celebrating your history. Those histories are lost through time, that are remarkable people, the social fabric of all communities. I'm delighted that there's events such as that taking place for Rutherglen. So my connection with Rutherglen only goes back to 2007, of course, when I became a regional MSP for Glasgow Region. Something I fulfilled until becoming a constituency MSP for Glasgow, Maryhill and Springburn in 2016. Now, let me be clear, I'm not saying that Rutherglen's part of Glasgow. Heaven forfend, I should say that. Or even sometimes for some people that they're part of Lanarkshire. They are Ruglonians first and foremost. Welcome, inclusive and passionate Ruglonians. Unless things have changed, Miss Hockey, I think that's still how they would view themselves. I want to give some personal reflections on my time in Rutherglen. I well remember my monthly surgery in the King Street Council buildings in the town over the years. And I also recall members of the my regular SNP meetings at St Columkille's Church Hall, where we would have to compete with the Irish dancing that takes place in there, and also the many hoolies that have now and again been part of at St Columkille's Church Hall. I hope that's all still going strong. And if I was very lucky, I would have the occasional pint at Dr Gorman's pub after one of those branch meetings. I understand it is no longer Dr Gorman's today. That's a backward step. Good luck to the new owners, but that's a backward step as far as I'm concerned. But I wanted to mention that because I used to go there with the late Councillor Gordon Clark. That was very much his local. I was saddened by Gordon's recent passing, and I want to put on record in this place the contribution Gordon made to public life and to the Rutherglen community over many years, including 10 years as a local councillor. My highlight whilst a regional MSP covering Rutherglen was always my annual attendance. I would be in trouble if I didn't go at Landomer Day with the late Gordon Clark and many others, some sadly no longer with us. And I would just like to mention Councillor Claire McCall and Councillor Anne Higgins, who are no longer with us, and friends across all parties with their own memories of people who are no longer with us. But I want to put those names on record, Presiding Officer. I always had a wonderful time at Landomer Day, supported by the people of Rutherglen and their thousands each and every year. Always a passionate, vibrant and lovely demonstration of Rutherglen civic pride and creative endeavour. I hadn't known Landomer Day only recommenced in 1974, having fallen into abeyance in 1926, something I learned in preparation for today's debate. And I'm also pleased that it's bounced back so strongly since COVID-19. In closing, Presiding Officer, I just want to say that it's really important that all communities celebrate such landmarks. I had a members' debate in here not that long ago about Summerston, where I stay, celebrating 50 years. The church I go to in Mary Hill will be celebrating their 50 years anniversary, but it's not really about the numbers of how many years a community has been in existence. It's about the people who knit together that community in such a beautiful, wonderful, vibrant and diverse way. And that's how I think about Rutherglen. It was a privilege to represent it for a small period of time. Those that represent it today, including Claire Hawkey, you're all very lucky and very privileged, and happy birthday to Rutherglen.
Thank you, Mr Doris. Now call the final speaker in the open debate, Monica Lynn. Again, around 4 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'd like to congratulate Claire Hawkey on securing this debate, and it's been lovely to hear the contributions so far. Everyone's so enthusiastic about Rutherglen and the many things that it's famous for, and the longer you sit here you think of something else that's worth mentioning. So I'll add to that SCIAF, which was founded in Rutherglen, and there was a wonderful mass just in recent months in St Columkille's Church in Rutherglen. Again, another reason to celebrate the wonderful town that is Rutherglen. Of course, 2026 is the year of Rutherglen, and I think the calendar of events and projects that Rutherglen 900 has pulled together, which really is a testament to communities. It's a grassroots endeavour, although the funding and support from Clyde Gateway, South Lanarkshire Council, local businesses and hopefully the Scottish Government too, because I'm sure the Cabinet Secretary will be most welcome at all these events. You know, I think in particular the Book Festival jumps out at me, but I think as Annie Wells and Claire Hawkey have said, it's the events that really celebrate Rutherglen's past, retell that for a new generation, and the involvement of the children and young people, especially through the schools, means that there will be a lasting legacy. It's not just come along to some events and then we move on. So I think that the educational work is really quite striking. I think the effort's been made to capture the oral history. I think the oral time capsule, podcasts. I believe that Michael Shanks, the local MP, recorded an episode with Borough Primary just in the last couple of weeks. All these things really make sure that the stories that we tell each other, you know, are safe to pass on to the next generation. I think it's maybe a pity we're not going to see Bob Doris partaking some Irish dancing, but you never know. So if the organisers are listening, I think I'm getting agreement from the Cabinet Secretary there. So it's not too late to add that to the programme. But I think, you know, often when we're in the chamber, we're discussing challenges and difficult issues. This is really an opportunity to think about all the things that make our community so vibrant, all the great work that goes on, all the unsung heroes, and it's a chance to bring people together for a happy occasion. So whether you're from Rutherglen, South Lanarkshire, Glasgow or beyond, this is a cause for national celebration. Rutherglen is a community with a deep, enduring place in our national story, and I hope that everyone will feel welcome to come to Rutherglen to take part in these events, or maybe just to discover Rutherglen for the first time as well. Colleagues have mentioned some of the fantastic organisations that are really at the heart of Rutherglen 900, including Healthy and Happy, and I wish a fond farewell to Brendan Rooney, the Chief Executive, who's retiring, Camglen Radio, that Bob Doris has mentioned, and Rutherglen Heritage Society. When I went along to the AGM of Rutherglen 900 last year, I was quite pleased to see some former town planning colleagues of mine who live locally, and they're very active on the heritage side, but also at bringing together the volunteers. So I want to just finish by saying, of course,
Claire
of course.
Claire Hawkey.
I thank Monica Lennon for giving me the opportunity